Hello and welcome to the 1904 Club, the Hull City podcast from the Hull Daily Mail. And we've got Burnsy in the chair today, and we've got somebody who has done a TV advert trying to be Kevin McAllister.
It should have been more Kevin McLeod. That would have befitted my age. I could have done a full rundown of what that beautiful house in Wimbledon was actually like inside and out. A Christmas promo that kind of you come in and out of, and then you've got to remind people that it's about football, which is always good, isn't it? But no, it's the things I get asked to do, Baz. Hey, the things I get asked to do.
At least the thing is, Prutts, at least you're game for it. You're not.
Well, I mean, you can't remotely take me seriously, can you? Christ, if I start doing that now, I'm way too far gone for kind of hitting kind of Paxman territory. So why not laugh at yourself, when everyone else is?
Burnsy, you watched the game on Saturday. I think
gear change.
The displeasure.
I've actually gone from farcical comedy
to farcical performances.
So there you go. Yeah, there you go.
Seamless transition. Yeah, so Hull City beating again, Burnsy, at Coventry on Saturday, despite taking a 43rd minute lead through João Pedro. How would you assess that performance?
Well, a big backward step. They've gone from hopeful against Watford in midweek to hopeless at Coventry, weren't they? There was they were poor throughout. I know he's only in the door, but I looked at the team selection from the manager and thought, I'm surprised he's gone unchanged. Third game in a week. Why is there no fresh legs in there? I tweeted before the game, and I look an idiot because he scored, because I just didn't think Pedro would have the legs to go again. Credit to him, he scored. I was concerned about Alzate, who's just coming back from injury, why he started, and I think he was anonymous. He wasn't alone in being anonymous. Some of them didn't leave a footprint in the sand, did they? And on the evidence of that performance, that the owner is in a real life version of Survivor now, isn't he? If I'd watched the Turkish version of Survivor, I'd have a smart analogy for you, but I don't. But that somehow they've got to survive this, because you look at it, what have they got? 16 points from 21 games. Plymouth needed 51 points to stay up last season. And the evidence of Saturday and what we've seen before, let's not forget they've not won in 13 games. They're in big trouble, and everybody's pinning their hopes on the January transfer window, which is notoriously difficult at the best of times. But when you're bottom of the table and have got a patchy record in the last transfer window, everybody has a right to be concerned about where the club's going. Vertically downwards, I might say, on the evidence of Saturday.
I did enjoy that in the last pod, asking, just because you're right. I mean, just what on earth does vertically mean when you're playing in on a linear pitch? But obviously, if you are talking directionally and from a coaching point of view, I suppose it just about stands as a bit of terminology.
He's got a big job on this week, and he said that to me at Coventry on Saturday. This is a full week now going into the Swansea game at the weekend. He's got on the training pitch a bit more time to have meetings, to try and get actual work done on the training pitch. Obviously, last week he arrived on the Monday, had a game on the Wednesday and a game on the Saturday. So it has been difficult for him, hasn't it, Prutts, in terms of having that instant impact. And I think that's the kind of the frustrating thing, because we all felt a bit more optimistic after the Watford game. Yes, they didn't win it, and yes, it was a game they should have won, having taken the lead. But at least it stopped that 6-game losing run, and everybody just felt a little bit more optimistic. So you go into Coventry, who, with the greatest respect, weren't in great form themselves, hence why they changed their manager. And City just did not turn up. Yes, they took the lead, but they were that first half, they were absolutely garbage. And that's not. I'm not usually one to hang them out to dry. I try and be.
Well, that's not hanging them out to dry, is it?
They just were shambolic in that first half, but they did that. They stuck in there by hook or by crook, got a goal, and then, as they did on Wednesday night, couldn't keep it for 10 minutes of playing time. And once Coventry scored, even with the penalty save, you never felt that City were really going to go on and win the game.
No, the kicker comes obviously in the Watford game, just been a couple of minutes from normal time ending and not being able to manage it through. I mean, the goal itself that was scored will never be put down as a classic, would it? A teammate kicking the ball against another team and entering the back of the net. But then you move into the game at the weekend, where it was one I was really looking forward to seeing, because you have two, as you say, new appointments, two different sets of expectations. Because yes, we're talking about a City side that is points-wise not miles off being safe, but they're absolutely in a fight now, I think, for consolidation. And maybe to kind of, it sounds a little bit maybe overtly pessimistic, given it's just December, but before long we'll be saying it's just January, it's just February, it's March. Season. You'll go, right, we're into Easter now. There's a big couple of games needed, and then City could be not cut adrift by any stretch of the imagination, but plugging away with to no great effect. The words that you're using there to describe them, that's not kind of hanging them out to dry. I have this discussion all the time about, obviously, the vocabulary that's used about describing performances is different for different platforms, and it's different for different aims of the person that's delivering them, whether it's on social media sites that are prone to clickbait. I totally get words like garbage and the like, but you can look at a professional set of players and say that they haven't turned up and they've not fundamentally done the jobs. That's what they're there to do. They're there to be professionally critiqued. The reason they get paid so much is because a lot of people watch football, whether that's in the stadium or on telly. So they're big enough and brave enough to take that type of criticism on the chin, and they should do. But I think it just puts into real sharp focus the job that Ruben's got in his hands, because we are talking about a manager that's got experience up the divisions, absolutely. But the main bulk of his career has been at a team that's been fighting in so many different areas. And maybe the job of getting Hull City to safety, given what he's experienced at Reading, is the type of challenge that's breathed new air into him. You sit there as City fans and you look at the way the season's gone, and there's so much to point the finger at and so much to be not very happy about at all. But if Ruben's first and only real responsibility is not placating the fans about protests, about ownership, about money coming in and out of the club, it's literally just to get the best team on the pitch. As a footballing man as he is, as a coach as he is, maybe he's rubbing his hands together. Yes, it's come fast and furious the first couple of games. That's the Championship. But now he's got a week of a bit of a breather, which in this division, with these particular teams, is like gold dust. So I'm intrigued to see what happens the other end of it. But for now, there's so much that needs putting right. And to be brutally honest, so much of it is on the shoulders of the players.
Burnsy, I said to him on Saturday, I given how the performance played out and how bad it was, and I saw words, and you would have seen words like spineless and gutless from fans that went to Coventry, that paid a lot of money to travel, a long way to Coventry for an early kickoff, and felt let down by particularly the first half performance. They were better in the second half in terms of going forward. They created a bit more. They looked a bit more cohesive, but defensively they looked a mess again. Every time Coventry came forward, they looked like conceding. Ephraim Mason-Clark just completely destroyed Louis Coyle from the first minute of the first half. Mason-Clark.
Did he have any help, Coyle?
No.
I'm not trying to say. Well, Ephraim is a very good player. He's taken his time to establish himself at Coventry, but he's scored in every single one of Frank's games so far. It's not like, where have you come from? No, he's their main attacking threat down one side of the pitch, dovetailed obviously with the forwards that they've got in Jack Rodoni. So if he has been left on his own, and I'm not just saying this because I like Louis as a lad, he's got his responsibilities as a fullback against his winger, but Christ almighty, you nullify the threat away from home first before you do anything else.
Given that, Prutts, it's an interesting point, because he had a bad game, and we've got a lot of tweets questioning in his position in the side, and rightly so. Both goals he was culpable in. But given what you've said, so the lad at Coventry's banging form, and it's difficult to handle. So who's as the coach failed and the coaching team failed by not saying we'll double up on him, or as it was Kamara Coyle's side, has Kamara failed by not following his instructions and tracking back, or have they, somebody's got to take responsibility for it?
Yeah, I'd say it's a combination of a few of those, not least Louis himself. If I was a more senior player that was getting done repeatedly with a winger and my winger wasn't helping me, it's not passing the blame, it's sharing the responsibility. That's what it is. And it might be a bit of an old-fashioned terminology about doubling up on a player, because we're not talking about, with the greatest respect, Cristiano Ronaldo, are we, on that type? But he's a player that's banging form and very confident, and a player that I've seen at Peterborough, who's a fantastic footballer with the ball at his feet. So when you are having a dodgy game, as all footballers are prone to doing, or at the mercy of, then you do need to look around and think, well, I'm not at my best here, but can someone come and give me an hand? It all sounds very straightforward. It would be very, very surprising if Ruben hadn't kind of allotted a bit of time to looking at that and absolutely, or just flagging it up. And the flip side of it is the most potent and important part being about a professional football is preparation. Louis should know what he can do, Ephraim, when it comes to fronting him up and getting past him and tracking the back post. Absolutely should know that.
Yeah, tactically, that was something I asked about. What were their plans to try and stop Coventry down both sides, particularly with Mason Clark? And the plan was to close off both wings and make Coventry go centrally through the central channels, and then have Slater and Alzate closing them off. And if they couldn't have them closed off, use the central defenders. But unfortunately, neither Slater or Alzate were able to do that. Casey Palmer, when he dropped back, had a really poor game as well. Kept giving the ball away, and it just didn't work. And then eventually, Coventry, from very early on, Coventry obviously looked to go wide, and they just could not. So I think tactically, they obviously identified that was where Coventry was strong. And as you say, Prutts, Mason Clark was in really good form. So the plan was to stop Coventry from attacking down both sides. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, they just didn't. The players actually on the pitch were unable to do anything about it. And when it became, it was fairly obvious fairly early on. Mason Clark, it was within the first few minutes. Mason Clark fronted Louis up and skinned him and left him for dust, and got down the left hand side and got across him, which I think McLaughlin batted away for a corner. But yeah, that was a warning sign very early on, inside the first 10 minutes, that City never ever recovered from. And they just, as Coventry rightly did, give him the ball, give Mason Clark the ball, and every time they gave it to him, something happened. Whether it was a cross, a corner, they got a corner out of it. Obviously, the two goals, which were, as good forward play as it was from Mason Clark on both accounts, the defending was just shambolic. There's no, you look at the equalising goal, and that's the frustrating thing for me, was they'd actually started the second half fairly okay. City, they got in front, the crowd were quiet, and then bang, out of nothing, Torp is allowed, from Giles' side on the other side, is allowed to ping across. It was kind of almost a hopeful cross, really, because there was nobody. There was actually nobody in the penalty box, and you're thinking, I'm watching it coming in, thinking that's all right. I'm happy with that, because there's nobody in the penalty box. They'll deal with it, and then bang, out of nothing, Louis Coyle's completely lost the fact that Mason Clark's behind him, and he's just. And I don't like to say this about Louis, because he's like you, Prutts, and you as well. But I rate him. I think he's a great lad. He's Hull City at his core. But Mason Clark wanted it more than Louis Coyle. He got in at the back post, and he wanted it more. And and that is not acceptable. And I think and we've said this before. And as much as we felt that Tim Walter was out of his depth in this position at this level of football in the Championship. The players are the ones out on the pitch. The players have got to perform. They haven't been performing, and we've made excuses for them at times this season. I feel that they haven't performed, and we've gone, well, it's the tactics. It's what they're being asked to do. They're being asked to do things that are foreign, that they're not comfortable with, and it's bless the players. For me, the players have now got to stand up and be counted, because that first half performance was not acceptable, and the 2 goals they conceded were not acceptable. Charlie Hughes got booked moments before he then made a rash tackle for the on Bissett for the penalty. Players have got to stand up here and be counted.
Well, I mean, that's the thing now because of what the perception of Tim Volter was like. We heard people's take on it and players' take on it, and I'm slightly tongue in cheek with this. But now that the big bad wolf's gone, what is the excuse for playing poorly? There isn't really, other than we've not got confidence because of how the season's gone so far. Right now, as we talk in December, getting towards Christmas, Hull City have more than enough time and more than enough quality in that squad, I think, and it may sound like going after low hanging fruit to be safe. Which I'm sorry for listening to this, and you just go, "Oh Christ!" They do, and it sounds pessimistic and cynical, but that's what's been created by everybody from top to bottom, And let's going over all ground. Big players have gone. Players that have since, look at Liam in the Premier League. Jesus Christ, he's flying, absolutely flying. So he, with the greatest respect, was always destined for bigger than what Hull City are right now. Given what we thought with Liam moving on, Rossini as the manager, categorically now the wrong decision. But they've made the decisions. They're going to professionally live and die by them. But right now, there is enough to keep them up. And that is right now where that first port of call should be. Anything other than that is a bonus, but it's a collective. Like I said, the players have got rid of someone that they not got rid of. By virtue of the results, that manager has been moved on. It looked dicey from the outset, and now Ruben's come in, who has got a very, very good reputation as coaching players in difficult circumstances. So there's another arm around their shoulder. But as a collective, as you say, Baz, fundamentals need to be taken care of. If you're a fullback, you make sure your winger doesn't score. If you're a central defender, you stay on your feet. If you're a goalkeeper, you command your 18-yard box. If you're a central midfielder, you get on the ball. You take responsibility for cutting off balls into feet. If you're a winger, you help out your fullback. And if you're a centre forward and you're not getting chances created, you absolutely give them the shortest shrift to make sure that you need to put it somewhere where I can get on the end of it.
Very often I take issue with you, Prutts, but I think you made a bold statement there. I'm not sure they have got the quality.
No.
What I see really concerns me. I look at them, and somebody sent me a tweet the other day saying, which players in that side would a higher ranked side sign, and there ain't many.
I think I understand that take on it, but Hull, Plymouth, Pompey, Cardiff, Oxford, potentially Luton, and look what QPR have done so far. I think, and I say this again as an ex-pro that's played in that division a very, very long time ago. There's so many squads there that are interchangeable. So I think by virtue of that fact that you can throw a blanket over quite a lot of those players and squads, I think by hook or by crook, and whether it's by luck or design, I think Hull City can be not one of the worst three teams in that. Which again, I mean, talk about damning with faint praise. That's the situation that's been created by the ownership, the management, and the squad. And I do get what you're saying, Burnsy. I do, because it almost puts into sharper focus and even kind of rose tints the spectacles a little more about how good that City squad was last season. I think that's. But again, but then do we then dial back a bit of pessimism as well and go, well, I can't believe they didn't finish in the top six. But then I think the top end of the championship was stronger than it is this year. So it's all relative. But I totally get your point, Burns. I totally get your point.
The standards appalling in the championship. This, to my mind, the overall standard. And I've seen. I mean, Watford were technically adept and up there, but there was no sort of real, for all their technical superiority against City in midweek, they didn't really make it count. And when West Brom came, they were, what did they go, fifth or something like that? But they didn't do enough. I just look at the standard of the division and think it's the worst standard I've seen in the championship for a good few seasons overall. It doesn't mean it's not competitive. It doesn't mean it's not compelling. But from a quality point of view, I'm just not sure about it. Just to read out a couple of messages, James Deoxy Ribbo 87 agrees with you. Baz, he bandies around the word spineless and toothless. Robin Weston makes a fair point. We need patience. He's only got 3 training sessions. It takes time to pick players up after their confidence has been shattered. And I'm just reading this one because I like his name. Steamboat Fatty says, who is actually in charge of January recruitment, and will the coach have a say? Are there any decent larkers in the reserves under 21s worth blooding? Well, he's got a reputation for that. Me and Baz talked about that on last week's pod. And Alex says, there's a bit of perspective here, just had a glance at Danny Roll's start at the Wendy's, lost 5 of his first 6. We have a tough start to weather. Any points is a massive win for us. Next 2, probably the pick of the Christmas games. Desperate for some seasoned pros in January and 1 or 2 attackers. Touched on it last week. And having listened to the press conference last week where the manager was introduced and Jared Dublin was talking about the recruitment probably be centred around young players, I'm with Alex. I think they need experience. Personally, I think you need nous to get you out of the situation they're in. Prutts?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. The likes of a Cunningham and etc. that would, or a Christie, or players that when you look at them in a certain light are seen as potentially thanks and time to move on. But when you put yourself in a position where you need that type of player once again, suddenly everyone goes, "Oh yeah, they'd have been actually pretty good to have around the team." So I would lean towards that. It's as everyone knows with January transfer windows, and it's very cliched about the difficulties of what you're going to get, whether you get value for money, whether you get a player that's been sat on his backside for 3 or 4 months and has to come in and start playing a couple of games a week, whether he's up to it fitness-wise, because you don't have the time to wait for people to get up to speed because you're losing games very, very quickly. So there's a real kind of crossroads here. I can't believe Ruben wouldn't have come in without the ability to change what the squad or part of the makeup of the squad in January. I'm not saying he'll have shed loads of money to shed loads of players, because it's about the quality of the player rather than just getting quantity. And because as we've seen, big turnover in the summer. So I would think that would be the case, and I would err on the side of a bit of experience, because the words that we're using all make it sound like it's quite an immature squad. Not immature in a childish way, but immature in the sense of game management, of feeling sorry for themselves, it sounds like. And are they feeling sorry for themselves because of just literally how the season's gone? Are they feeling sorry for themselves because Tim Walter's management style was a certain way? He wasn't as holistic potentially as other managers. He wasn't like a Liam, but not everyone's like Liam. So if I was in that squad and I was in that team, you'd be hoping for recruits to be coming in and the right type of recruits to be coming in. But you sure as hell need to have a good look at yourselves, because they've been nowhere near, have they? As you say, a team that's not winning 13 now. Bloody hell.
Well, that's the worry for me. When you look at, and I know we've touched on it already about the league last season and Plymouth staying up with 50-odd points. And I know, it was a better league last year in terms of quality, but Birmingham went down with 13 wins. Hull City have got 3. 13 wins. And Birmingham went down with 13. So just to get where Birmingham are, if we're comparing with last year, City need 10 more wins. 10. Where they've won 3 all season. Yeah. Where are 10 more wins coming from? Just to be on a par with where the relegated teams were back in May. That is, and it may, in reality, it may not need that. It may not need 52 points to stay up. It may need only 45, or based on how awful. Let's be fair, Cardiff, Portsmouth, City, Cardiff, the teams down there are awful. And I had the displeasure of watching the Derby, the second half of the Derby Portsmouth game on Friday night, and that Portsmouth second half performance was as bad as a championship performance as I've seen in as many years. I can't remember put it this way, I can't remember and I include City away at Swansea and Shotter's final game in that defensively. They were awful. How City didn't beat them at the MKM Stadium a few weeks ago, it says everything to me.
The thing with that as well, Baz, and it just makes you think because in recent weeks we did, so not the weekend just gone, but we did Leeds against Derby, and that was a complete mismatch at Ellen Road. And even Paul Warner had alluded to that. So complete mismatch at Ellen Road. I think they had a shot. I think Derby had a shot in the 67th minute and then a shot on target in the 80th. And Leeds were very, very comfortable. You then move that forward to them absolutely destroying Pompey, a mid-table team destroying a team down at the bottom, which I think you're absolutely right, does show starkly what the different sections of the division are like. I think Sheffield United and Leeds, for me, I'm not saying it's boxed off by any stretch of the imagination, but they look as good a top two as two teams to win this particular part of that division. Burnley, we know, have got something about them. We did West Brom during the course of the week that, with a win, got into the top 6. They've just dropped out of the weekend, but after not winning in 11, drawing 10 of those games. So, and then you work your way. Sheffield Wednesday were a side that looked like they were struggling. Now currently sat 9th in the division, and they're just 3 points behind West Brom. Then as you get further down, that sliding scale of what the quality is and what the teams are capable of, it's I think you're right. I mean, I've just a minute ago said I think they could be safe, which I do still, having seen what I've seen in the teams that are down there, you're right. But given the stats that you've just thrown at me, that they need 10 more wins, it's going to have to be one hell of a turnaround, emotionally, mentally, physically, tactically, because, as you say, nowhere near it.
They've got 25 games left. They're going to have to go on some kind of promotion winning form. They've got 25 games. And if we're saying to get to 50 points, which is what got Birmingham relegated, then they're going to need 10 more wins.
Yeah.
From 25 games. I mean, even the eternal optimist, that is a stretch based on what the body of work we've gone through so far. There's been nothing. And look, and I give credit to the boys at Ali and George at not the top 20. They did an interesting foot mob analysis before the game at Coventry in midweek. On Saturday. I think it was just before the Watford game as well, actually.
It was, I heard it, yeah.
Yeah, and so they were talking about the underlying stats of City, particularly in that run of 6 straight defeats, bar the Sheffield Wednesday game where they were inept, frankly. But just quickly, that inept word is starting to creep in more. They were inept against Sheffield Wednesday. They were inept at Coventry. So that's starting to become a problem. It's not just a one-off anymore. But anyway, the underlying stats of what George and Ali were saying were actually that City's performances were better than what the results suggested, which gave you reason to be optimistic with Ruben coming in, that he could tap into that and make more of it and actually get those performances to be more consistent over 90 minutes and then in turn start to get positive results. Now, obviously, we've only seen 2 and one of those was for at least 45 minutes was a complete non-event. But, the pressure is now on. If they don't win at Swansea, they will be bottom of the Championship at Christmas. And teams, I think it's something like 7 out of the last 10 teams bottom at Christmas have got relegated. And we can all talk about, like you do, Prutts quality. Burnsy questions that. I think a lot of fans would question that. I kind of think they've got enough in their dressing room in terms of quality, but it's all right having it. It's another thing using it and getting results from that.
The other part about that is, and it goes back to Burnsy's point, which I think is absolutely right and reflective of what the division is. It won't, and this might sound a little bit arse about face, given what we're seeing from the teams down there. It's not a question of quality that'll get you out of it. It's a question of capability, of being able to manage games. Yeah. They're not going to football the way out the bottom 3. If they can start defending comprehensively better, I mean, and I'm not setting up this second half of the season to be. It doesn't sound too thrilling, doesn't it? They just have to become harder to beat. That word inept, that's a suggestion of not having the ability to be able to carry out your job. really, doesn't that's that? I mean, I don't know the literal definition, but that's what it is reflective of. So if they aren't doing the basics, then yeah, the chances of staying up would be slim. But the point I was making that by virtue of who these players are and the makeup of the players in the squad and the relative experience of the squad that we're talking about, maybe added to in January, they should have not necessarily the quality, but the capability to be solid enough to grit the teeth and attritionally get out the bottom three. They should, because I think there's much of a muchness in a lot of teams down there. I put Luton in it to an extent, but Luton have got former Premier League experience, but just seemingly don't really know what to do with themselves at the moment, do they? On a consistency basis. Yeah. So there's we're not looking at it's 3 from 4. You're looking at it's 3 from potentially 8. So talk about every cloud. There is the tiniest rim of a silver lining around that cloud to suggest that if this head coach is and I'm not saying it's Ruben's fault that they're in the situation, or if they do go down, it's Ruben's fault as well. But I'm saying he's got enough time, if he's as good as people say he is, to get something out of this.
And that's the thing, though. As poor as results have been, and as dismal and disastrous as this season has been for all of us, they're not cut adrift. You know, we're not talking at Southampton in the Premier League where they're relegated already, and there's a realistic chance they won't even reach Derby's pathetic target of 2008. So they're still in it. A couple of results and they're out of. They're starting to look up the table. The issue is, the longer it gets, it stands at 13 games now, which is over half the season. They haven't won a game. They've only played 21 and they haven't won in 13 games. So they're over half the season through, half that run through without winning a game. So there's got to be a miraculous turnaround from somewhere. They've lost 7 out of 8 with 1 draw. They've not won in 13 games. They've won 3 of 21. They've kept 1 clean sheet in 20 games. So that stat in itself, 1 clean sheet in 21 games, is paramount to their problems, because the games they've scored 1 goal. They scored first against Watford, couldn't manage the game, drew. They scored first at Coventry, playing terribly, lost the game. So had they have been able to keep a clean sheet in both those games, we're sitting here going, well, Ruben's come in and he's got 6 points out of 6 and he's got 2 clean sheets. Is he the Messiah? Do you know what I mean? It's that. So, and they've shown the capability of getting in front. As bad as they were at Coventry, they showed the ability to stick at it, to grind away to get a goal and go in at half-time, a goal to the good. You go, right, okay, it's smash and grab, but they've got in front. Now go and hold it. Go for straight Coventry, which you've done all half. You've rode your luck, but you've got there. Go and do it in the second half and come away here at the very least with a point. And they lost 2-1. They were well beaten. I mean, Coventry scored the penalty. They lose 3-1. They had decent moments in the second half, admittedly, but nothing. The goalkeepers, they've not worked the goalkeeper massively. Burstow's had an effort from the edge of the box. He's hit over the crossbar. He should have hit the target. He made a good cross for João Pedro, who missed it. There were a couple of other nearly moments, but they've not worked the goalkeeper. But in that game, when whether you're top or bottom or in the middle, you come away from that game having been 1-0 up just before half time, and you say, right, whatever happens, we come away with a result. Even if we can't hold on to that win because we're going to come under a barrage of pressure second half, and they're whatever, we get a point. We don't lose the game and lose it with a fair bit to spare, because it's not like in the five minutes of added time or whatever it was, 7 I think it was, to be fair, that they were banging on the door and knocking, putting crosses in and shots blocked. There was nothing like that. No. And that is the worry for me, that the manager's got to turn around.
Can I read some messages? Because we've had loads of messages to the 1904 club. Danny McDonald says, I think the team are weak physically and mentally, and I fear that we don't have the stomach for a relegation battle. I can't think of a team in the league with less attacking quality than ours, and the defensive side of our game is pathetic at times. I feel sorry for Ruben, says Danny McDonald. Coxey, touching on something we touched on before, Worrying to hear that Ruben's tactics was to shut down the wings and stop the crosses coming in and make Coventry play through the middle. But to see Coyle and Giles repeatedly let Coventry out, cross or put cross after cross in, shows Coyle and Giles just aren't good enough. Oliver Drew says it was an awful performance all round that has relegation written all over it. January's massive, but we need points before then. Where are they coming from? We need half a new team in January. How? Good question. But you can see what Sellers is trying to do with the team, and I like it a lot. And Nigel says, does Coyle need to come out with the team for a rest? Had a poor game versus Coventry, and I was surprised he wasn't subbed, if I'm totally honest. He was run ragged, looks tired and not at his best at the moment. I have to say, I think Drame should be in at right back on Saturday. Giles had a poor game, lots of changes. And just touching on Burstow, who gets in some good positions. He doesn't take the chances. This might, I don't know whether this is old-fashioned or not, but I think if I'd be saying to him, because he looks like a player needs a bit of a cuddle. So you're getting in really good positions. Do you fancy coming in doing 2 or 3 extra afternoons with us, working on the finishing this week? We'll get you either get a coach in, or we'll stick one of the coaches with you. You're going to be in the team Saturday, but give us a bit more time, and hopefully you're the man to score the goals for us. Would it work? It's worth trying, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm very much in agreement with that, Burnsy. There's absolutely no reason why he shouldn't. The consistent players, the best players, the better players become that by virtue of what practice goes in. I don't know what they're doing on a daily basis, how intense the training is, what their minutes are, or the loads that are being managed, or all this type of stuff that and terminology that gets used. But again, I mean, a City. We talked about Mason when he came in. A City looking for a player that isn't that player. I mean, if he come in with numbers coming out of his ears of goals scored and assists and all that, then you're going, well, let's get you back to that. This is me saying off the top of my head, not knowing what his goal scoring record is throughout the course of his career. But if you've got, it's funny because I always think that there's a slight tweak in what that terminology is between a striker and a forward. A forward suggests someone that is an attack-minded player that literally goes forward. A striker to me is a goal scorer. By virtue of you have the word strike being in the name striker, but so the combination of the chemistry of the team and the squad that they put together, if you're relying on him to get you 10, 15 goals to get you to safety, then right now no one's seeing that. That's not to say that players can't go on purple patches, but going back to what your point was, Burnsy, about doing the utmost, just like, I mean, the other part about it as well, just like different departments in a team, hopefully the defence is working as a unit, working on one-on-one situations, working on doubling up, working on tracking the back post, working on defending set pieces. I'd like to think at this moment in time, without sounding like a boring old ex-pro, which I know I can be prone to doing, that there's no stone being left unturned in making them better than they are or maximising what they're after. If you've got a striker that's a forward player that's not scoring goals or getting his shots off, get your ass in and practice getting your shots off. It's not, there's no rocket science to it. Consistency of application should, in theory, push your output up. But I don't know. Like I said, that's me not being party to what's going on behind the scenes. I am actually in Cottingham on Sunday visiting the parents, so maybe I'll have a little look over the fence and see what's going on. And if there's nothing going on, I'll send you all a picture saying, City don't care. They're not in on a Sunday. It's terrible.
It may well be going on, Prutts. It may well be going. Yeah, may well be going on. But you look at it from the outside and you think that lad getting in the good positions, maybe a bit of extra work, maybe a specialist striker coach.
Yeah.
Don't know, because these are desperate times. They've got to try everything. Baz has got this big pen in the air. I thought Baz would have a Mont Blanc or something like that, but no, he's got a big pen What have you got with your big pen?
It's got a Mont Blanc from the covered market. It's not quite the right one.
It's not
Go with a K at the end.
No, it's not a big pen. Cutbacks. It's not a big pen. So I was at the training ground on Thursday. Was it Thursday? Whatever day it was, and
no one was there.
No, yeah, they were all in the canteen having tiramisu. The tiramisu was fantastic, by the way. Thanks to Kareem for that, by the way. Yeah.
He's the only one whose standards haven't dropped. This kid sounds like he's on fire.
The chef is doing a great job.
They'll get relegated, but the chef will win Master Chef.
I'll tell you what.
Huge exit from Hull City. Chef leaves for Premier League. Like that.
They had a thing that under Liam, they had a thing. Joking aside, continuing that under Liam, they had a thing where if they won 2 in a row, they got steak for dinner one day in the following week. So maybe they should like reintroduce that as an incentive. Like lads, you can have steak Thursday if you win your game.
An army marches on its stomach, doesn't it? So
exactly, yeah.
In fact, let's get the chef on. Maybe he's dropped his standards. That's why City have been toiling.
Kareem, if you're listening to this, get on here.
Get yourself on here. Face the music, you.
Yeah. But no, they were. A lot of the players were out after the session had finished on Thursday practicing. Mason Burstow was one of those actually. Will Jarvis was another. And they were pinging shots at Timothy Lotatala and Harvey Cartwright. So. Look, I don't doubt that they are doing extra work on the training pitch because they're professionals. They don't, these professional footballers don't want to be, labelled as spineless. They don't want to be labelled as rubbish, as god awful footballers that are bottom of the table. At the minute after 21 games of football, Hull City, and there's teams above them that have got games in hand which could make the situation potentially worse if they were to win. But these players are proud players. Louis Coyle is a proud Yorkshireman, a proud Hull City player, and it will be hurting him to see Hull City bottom of the league and by definition the worst team in the Championship after 21 games of football. Now, but on the flip side, only they can get them out of this. Only they can. The manager will do what he does, but ultimately, and it was the same on Saturday. Only Louis Coyle or Ryan Giles can stop crosses, and that's the thing. I believe that Louis Coyle and Ryan Giles are good enough to be Hull City's fullbacks. They aren't performing at the minute. Louis is going through a difficult spell of form. It happens in a season. It's rare that we would say that because he's normally one of the most consistent performers for the team. And you can probably count on one hand the amount of times that Louis Cole's let the team down and since he arrived in the summer of the League One, the relegation season. So he had a very poor game on Saturday. Probably his poorest game, and even within that, there were moments where he made good blocks and he made good tackles. It's just unfortunate that the 2 big errors that Louis made led directly to goals. Now, it's just these players have got to stand up and be counted, and I don't doubt that they are working hard. Like I said, they're professionals. Prutts, when you had difficult spells in your career, it's not like you were tossed off on the training pitch and you were thinking, I can't be arsed anymore. I'm going to go in from a deep bath, play on my Game Boy. But and read Razzle. It was nothing like that. It was like, I think these players will be working hard, but it's just they've got to perform on a Saturday, starting with this weekend. You're pulling faces. What are you pulling faces for?
Hang on, I've dropped my earphones at that reference of a certain publication from a certain time frame. You might have to. I was going to say explain to some of the young listeners what that is, but no, because you're getting into even more trouble doing that.
We've mentioned Master Chef. We don't want to go into Greg Wallace territory. Let's behave ourselves.
And the thing is, with those particular publications, they're always found in hedges. I don't know about you, but
if you find one in Nottingham on Sunday, let me know.
Stop it.
You are absolutely right, because it reminds me of not reminds me, but it makes you think about, you mentioned Southampton and you look at Wolves, and I've been in that situation in relegation battles where, because of what the media is, and very much poacher turned gamekeeper with this, where you sat questioning what's going on, you sat looking at why things aren't going right and doing your utmost. And then there's that opinion that these players are incapable, or as you said, using that word, inept, and they don't care, and they're going to the training ground for an hour, then going home and tossing it off. It's rubbish. It's because, as I said earlier on about what this job is, this profession is, because it's so popular, because it creates so much around the actual 11v11 on a pitch and means so much to all of us, is that everyone's got an opinion on it. And whether you think that opinion, reading it in a paper, listening to it online, some whopper in the street coming up and telling you that they think you're crap and why did you do that? And you've got to just go, yeah, you're right, sorry, really. When you just want to turn around and say, do you know what, mate? Expletive. This is my vocation. Do you know what it's taken for me to get from a little boy to get to do this as a job? Do you understand? And it's not, I understand, it's not a soapbox about what it is to be a footballer, but that the tiny percentage that can actually do it as a job for longer than 2 minutes is ridiculous. So to suggest that there's an element of, oh, well, we're bottom of the league and it's just one of those things is rubbish. That, like you say about Louis, and knowing him like I do, it'll be hurting him more than anyone else. But everyone that is in that dressing room as a professional, this should sting, really, really sting. And they should be doing absolutely everything, because part of what it is proving people wrong and proving to themselves that they can operate at this level. We questioned parts of the recruitment when you look at who's come in and how much championship experience they've got. And part of that is kind of coming to fruition with how these performances are being put together, how these results are being registered. And there's a lot going wrong at the moment, but I would not for 1 second, because I've not quite seen it with my own eyes yet, and I hope it doesn't manifest itself, that I don't think you've got a squad of players that don't care. I think you've got a squad of players that aren't performing and don't really know right now what to do about it. And let's be honest, forgive me this jump, but when you've got the best manager in the world scratching his head and his players looking inept, you are going, well, if it can happen to them, then it sure as shit can. It can happen to people further down the pyramid, staring down the barrel of League One. It absolutely can. So, whether that's of any comfort to a City fan, that it's happening at Manchester City as well, probably not. But form fitness it's so transient that it can change very quickly. We spoke a few months ago about a team that had won 4 on the bounce and then suddenly fell off a cliff, and here we are.
I'm holding up a Parker pen. I've put down.
Yeah,
that'll be your BBC playoff that can afford that.
it's one Upman penship or something. That's terrible.
It's engraved from the beam as well. It says all the best, Barnsey.
Look from Tony Hares.
Yeah. Very, very, very good. I'll just on the Man City thing. Just to looking at they've got all the experience in the world, because we were talking about experience in the transfer window in January. They've got all the experience in the world, but it's not paying off. So maybe City, I think they need experience, but Man City have gone over the hill, haven't they? There are too many old players now. So maybe that's a case against bringing in old players to help you out. I don't know. A couple of messages. Nigel Bryce says, Swansea a real must-win before Christmas for me. The 2 following away trips will be no pushovers, and the gap is gradually getting bigger. We need to escape this downward spiral before it comes too big of a task to do so. And James Martin says, how do you think this squad compares with that of the relegated side under McCann? I think it's slightly better, but only just. I think I had a quick look, James, and I sort of see what you mean. But I think that the relegation under McCann, the alarm bells went off way later than they are doing now. So the good thing for Ruben Sellers is he's got time to put this right, but he needs to work quickly. And January, it's got to be spot on in terms of recruitment. City Rich says this is the opposite of the new manager bounce. First time we've looked like relegation fodder. Huge job for a manager with a limited CV, both as a player or manager. does he have the necessary experience to call on? Well, Prutts touched on that, and we've touched on it before. He's got experience of a relegation battle at Reading, and he came through that. Rob Hoyle says, will Sellers have full autonomy to bring in who he wants in January? I think we all know the answer to that. He'll be part of the process, won't he? He'll have his say on it.
Yeah, and look, we need to understand that because the owner has spoken numerous times about how the situation works, and it will be, they aren't going to go mad. Well, I say they aren't going to go mad in January. Maybe they, their initial plan to be quite strategic in January gets blown out of the water because they start to panic and think we're bottom of the table. There's only 22 games left, or whatever it will be by the time we get to New Year's Day. But I do know from having conversations over the last few days that they've got specific targets. They want players in on the. They're hopeful of getting somebody in. In the first couple of days. It might not be done for Middlesbrough on New Year's Day because obviously it's New Year's Day. But I think there's a real desire to get at least one, if not two, in by the time they play Leeds a couple of days after the Middlesbrough game. So, and this is the thing. We've talked about this in the summer, that the club, the adjutant seemed fairly relaxed about losing August and knowing that they would bring players in at the back end of August because of how the domino effect in the Premier League works. Well, that can't be allowed to happen in January. We can't be going, we'll write January off until we get to the end, and we'll hopefully get James McAtee in on loan or whoever the play. I'm just throwing a name out there. Not as an example. That isn't to say that they're after him, but I'm just saying, a player from a Premier League team.
Twice you've mentioned him, though.
Is it?
Yeah, I think you mentioned him last week.
Oh, okay. But anyway, look, they can't be waiting until the last week of January on the off chance he might get somebody from a Premier League team. They've got to be proactive and get players in because there's a lot of games in January. The FA Cup buys them, the McCann Derby buys them time, buys them a bit of extra time in terms of league matches, but they want players in to give them some minutes in that game. They didn't have that benefit because they couldn't be bothered with the Carabao Cup. They lost to Wednesday's reserve, so they sacked that opportunity off and weren't able to use the Carabao Cup as an opportunity to get Charlie Hughes fit and Alzate fit and Rushworth fit and etc. etc. So but they've got to be proactive in January, and it is important. But what they can't do is we've said it and we'll say it again. They can't just splash cash they haven't got, trying to paper over the cracks. They've got to get players in that can hit the ground running, that aren't going to need 6 weeks to get fit, and that are coming in relatively confident. It is an impossible window. We all know that. Everybody says the same thing, but that isn't they've got to find a way around that. They've got to be clever. Jerry Dublin's got to do his work with the rest of them, and they've got to get players in of quality that are coming for the right reasons, are going to make a difference. But they've got to beat Swansea. Swansea are a good side under Luke Williams. I know him from Notts. He did a great job at Notts County. They're playing well. I know they lost. They were 2-0 up against Sunderland and lost 3-2. But that is not an easy game. That is a really difficult game. But they've got to start winning games. Otherwise, everything else is pointless. If they can't start winning games, they're going to get relegated. So at some point, they've got to win a game.
Couple of points. Matt at Councillor Matt on Twitter says, "Are we going to be able to buy our way out of trouble? Are the finances there?" Listening to you, Baz, suggestion that there's not loads of money to throw at this. Also, who's going to want to sign for a team bottom of the league? I'm pretty worried, says Matt. And I just want go on.
No, I'm just saying, great point. Yeah, it's attracting players now. Have they got the stomach for the fight? Because you're going to need a certain type of personality that says, "Yeah, that'll do for me for the next 3 or 4 months." That's a huge hurdle to get over.
And that's the thing, Prutts. That's what we said last week. Was that when you're, to repeat again because you weren't here and to get your input as well. Last season they were challenging for the Premier League. They could attract the likes of Fabio Carvalho. And they can attract the likes of Anas Sarori. Okay, that particular move didn't work out, but I think we're all buzzing when we knew that they were trying to get Sarori. Now who wants to come to Hull City when you're bottom of the league and it looks a bit hopeless? You need players that are hungry, that want to come, that see it. This is a potential career move, and I'll just come in for a fat paycheck and go, well, we'll go to Hull City because they'll pay us 25 grand a week, and if I get relegated with them, it don't really matter because I go back to my 50 grand a week club in the wage in the Premier League. They've got to get players in for the right reasons that can come, hit the ground running, and are coming because they want to play for Hull City and they want to make a difference and they want to play for Ruben Sayas. If they don't want to come for that reasons, then don't do it, because it will financially cripple the football club, and they will get a bit like Zaruri, who offered very little apart from a belter against Leicester. Will offer. They're just going to saddle the club with more debt, and that isn't a place they want to be. And they won't. They won't be any better off all around the pitch either.
Yeah, no, I can agree more. That's exactly what it is. That's I said, the dicey element of what January is. If you're in a position of weakness where City are now, you've almost kind of got to go cap in hand to get good players that get you up and out of trouble. So whether they strike upon people that are at football clubs that aren't getting a game, that do want to have a crack at not just keeping City up, because it's mutually beneficial. A player comes and plays well, attracts attention, City go up the league. It works all round, doesn't it? So you need ones that are tough enough, wary enough, and robust enough to understand that coming to City for 3 or 4 months is potentially a way of, like I said, furthering their own career. But that career only gets furthered by it being a success, and success for that is to get City out of the bottom 3.
Stuart Ashley suggests a couple of names. We'll not necessarily discuss them, but thanks to Stuart for sending us a couple of names. Transfers in January, possible loans. Roof at Glasgow Rangers, and Hayden, who was a former City loanee at Newcastle. Is it an attractive move to the bottom of the Championship? I'm not sure it is, but Stuart, thank you for that. Just one thing I wanted to clear up. I saw with the manager coming from Reading, I think there was some suggestions I saw that under the terms of the deal, he can't go back to Reading in this transfer window. Is that true, Baz?
So I asked that question a while ago and was told that isn't a thing. But from what I was, that was one particular conversation I had with somebody that should know, that said that he wasn't aware of that being a thing. But then I had another conversation with somebody else involved who said it doesn't really matter anyway, because they don't feel in January that Reading is a that they're going to go for League One players necessarily. So I think there's an acceptance that they want players with Championship. I know Jared Dublin said about young players, and they will. Well, there is a young player that I think they want. But I think they will primarily go for Championship experience, because they know that they need players. So Hayden would be we know they want a number 6. That's they've made. Adrian has said that publicly. They want a number 6. Hayden would be he's been in the league. He's done it. He was a target before. They want what, number 6. They want a couple of wingers, and they want the striker. There's 4 to start with. So. He also wants a smaller squad, this Ruben. So, I could see 6 or 7 potentially leaving. Who those 6 or 7 are, we'll have to wait and see. But that squad is too big. We know it's top heavy. They've got to get players out in order to register the players. So they will, I think, deregister Miller, Balumi, and Zambrano. So that gives them 3 players that they can bring in. They're going to have to deregister more or get more out to be able to get players in, but equally he wants a squad of about 22, 23, and then miles away from that. So, like I say, I wouldn't be surprised to see 6 or 7 shipped out.
Yeah. Who's the young player?
We'll have to wait and see, I think. Say again?
Bless you, by the way.
I think that was a cough.
I said that, didn't they?
Oh.
I've got smells is lurgy, haven't I? Yeah, so look, let's just wait and see what they do. I think the issue, as we've said, the issue they're going to have is as they did in the summer. They're going to be chasing the same sort of players, and like Tyler Morton. You think, well, Tyler Morton's kicking his heels at Liverpool. He's on the bench. He wants to play, but then if he goes to the Championship, City would probably look at taking him, I think. Why wouldn't you? But then, if he's going to go to the Championship, Sheffield United might want him, or a Burnley might want him, or a Leeds might want him, and then suddenly you go, well, as much as City have got a relationship with Tyler Morton and Liverpool, realistically, he's probably going to go to the top of the Championship, isn't he? So that's the issue, and that's just one example of players that may well be available in January, and City may well want to go for, but because of their league position, and that's why the next 2 or 3 games, we've got 3 games before the end of the year, Swansea, Preston, and Blackburn. If they could, I mean, it seems incredible to suggest they could get 6 points from those 3 games given their form, but suddenly they might be 15th in the table, and that looks they're a better proposition than being 24th. So that's why, even in isolation, these games are so important. Not least in their quest to get off the bottom of the table, they're important, and to give confidence and momentum, but also to become a more attractive proposition in January. If they're going into January 5 points adrift at the bottom of the table, players are going to look at that going, that's bloody hopeless. I don't want to go there. I'd rather go to Derby, or I'd rather go to Millwall or somewhere, with respect to those clubs. Because they're all going to be fishing. They're all those, as we said before, City and a lot of the clubs in the Championship are going to be fishing in the same sort of pond for the same sort of players, and it's going to be really hard to attract them.
I'm looking at the time, and we've done an hour of top quality waffle. So we've done. I just want to say thank you for all your messages. We've got an MBE who tunes into the 1904 club. Steve Lamb, MBE, sums it up. Swansea must win, could potentially lift us out of the bottom 3, dependent on other results. If we can get out, I'm confident we could stay out. So there you go. A man with letters after his name.
Yeah.
Prutts, on Swansea, give us your just to finish. Give us your kind of match preview assessment and the importance of it. Final game at home of 2024. 3 wins and 23 at home. I think it is this year. Absolutely awful. Can't buy a win at home. Can't buy a clean sheet at home. 3 points would be great, but it would make so much of a difference to everybody, wouldn't it?
It would. Swansea, the way that Luke plays, has got a real threat. They want to dominate proceedings. They've got players that really know how to move a football around. Matt Grimes being one of those. Cullen's been fantastic. Vipotnik's another player that they've got to be very, very wary of. Their disappointment at the way that they lost to Sunderland fuels them coming into this. Their ambition under Luke to be a team that could knock on the door of the upper reaches of the division coming into the season is what drives them. I think it's a huge task for City. Well, I'm intrigued to see what 5 days worth of work on the training pitch will garner. But going into it, like I said, take away their last result. I think they're unbeaten in 4 or 5 before then, Swansea, and the only defeat before that run being a loss to Leeds, 4-3 in the dying seconds of that game. It's a huge, huge challenge. Preston coming up after that. Yes, disappointed that they drew with Leeds because they were so good against Leeds, but that after the first win in 10, they have been in games more often than not. A clinical Preston against Hull City is right now a mismatch. I feel like that's a win for Preston. So I think this Swansea game is key, hopefully, to breed the type of confidence from a performance against a team that has been consistently better so far this season, that, as our MBE friend said, pushes them up and out of the bottom 3 and hopefully gives them some form of momentum when momentum's been lacking.
Yeah. Burnsy, any final point?
Well, I don't know. I'm just intrigued to see what he does. Few messages suggesting 3-5-2 would suit the squad better. I agree with that, but that's maybe a discussion for another time. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. It's a hell of a job. I hope we see something from this week of training that gives us a little bit of hope. But somebody's got to score some goals.
Yeah, on that bombshell, thank you everybody for watching, for listening, for getting your messages in. And here's to, well, we hope, a victory on Saturday, because blimey, do we all need it. Thanks for watching.